The world was forbidden, and that was all anyone needed to know. Vardun was death. The surface boiled under a volatile atmosphere. The soil oozed toxins. Its wildlife could not be cataloged. Every drone sent down was destroyed within minutes. The only thing that mattered on Vardun was the creature. They called it the sacred beast. The first sighting was little more than a blur of movement captured by an orbital probe. A silhouette 15 meters tall, covered in jagged plating and muscle, moving with impossible speed through thick jungle storms. A herd of subpredators, each capable of rending armored vehicles, fled in terror as the creature emerged. One of them paused. The beast struck. The footage ended there. The Varnari placed Vardun under quarantine. A death world with God on it. There was no logic, no science, no theory that explained its existence. No one tried again. Religion spun myths. Militaries plotted in secret. Intelligence groups shared whisper files, each more speculative than the last. 120 years passed. And then, without warning, a transmission hit the Concord networks. There was no message, just footage. The sacred beast stood atop a cliff, looking down over a valley scorched by volcanic vents. Its armor had changed, now adorned with angular plates not native to Vardun, glinting metal, purposefully placed. And on its back, holding what appeared to be a makeshift saddle, was a figure, a humanoid, a rider. The image looped. For hours, the Concord could only debate whether it was real. Simulations tried and failed to recreate the fluidity of the creature's movements. The consensus was horrifying. The footage was genuine. A second clip followed. This time, the rider issued a command. Subtle hand movements, unrecognizable to any known species. The beast reacted. It moved, followed, obeyed. The room fell into silence. For centuries, Vardun had been a symbol of the unknowable, of what the galaxy dared not touch. The sacred beast was its apex, a living denial of every biological rule. Unkillable, untamable, and now someone was riding it. The Concord scrambled. There were only a few species capable of surviving high lethality environments. Fewer still had the recklessness to try and domesticate a monster. One name came up. Humanity. The Varnari objected. They had watched the humans, studied them. A young race, adaptable but fractured. Their colonies were scattered and weak. Their technology, while respectable, was nothing revolutionary. But others disagreed. The Jektari pulled up an incident report. 30 years prior, a long-range human vessel went off course. Last known trajectory? Edge of the Vardun sector. Official report, presumed destroyed. No search mission filed. The humans had written them off. But now a human rode a sacred beast. An emergency summit was called. The Concord watched as more footage emerged. The same beast, the same rider. This time, they weren't alone. In a clearing shrouded by toxic mist, another creature stepped into view. Larger, darker, with broken horns and long talons dragging behind. A second rider approached from the left. Two beasts. Two riders, coordinated. The audio picked up a faint sound, laughter. It wasn't demonic or threatening. It was casual, joyful, human. A species that found humor in controlling extinction-level monsters. The Varnari broke silence. We revere the beast. The humans, they mock it. The room grew tense. Further footage confirmed what many feared. The creatures had been equipped, armored, modified. One bore a shoulder-mounted launcher. Another carried a net of what appeared to be barbed plasma anchors. These weren't just beasts anymore. They were war mounts. The Concord Defense Directorate called it an existential threat. The sacred beast was the embodiment of pure biological supremacy. If a species could not only survive it, but ride it, they weren't just dangerous. They were impossible to control. A quiet realization rippled across the assembly. What if humanity never intended to announce this? What if this footage was leaked, not sent? A captured data packet held the answer. The third transmission bore metadata identifying the origin as a long-abandoned relay station used by the Terran Colonial Front, offline for 50 years. Something had reactivated it. The Varnari demanded immediate intervention. Others hesitated. No human faction had claimed responsibility. No statement. No warning. Just the image. A human, smiling, seated atop a living myth. Worse still, sensor logs confirmed sudden movements on Vardan's surface. Thermal blooms. Energy spikes. Creatures the size of dropships, roaming in formations. Dozens of them. Training formations. Someone had built an army. The Concord's Admiralty issued a quiet command to all member navies. Prepare contingency deployments around the Vardan perimeter. Reinforcements were placed in strategic positions. Surveillance doubled. No one said the word war, but no one had to, because a fourth video arrived. The camera angle was shaky, an apparent body cam from a reconnaissance drone that had survived long enough to send data. It opened with chaos, broken trees, craters, plasma burns. In the center stood a beast unlike the others. Towering above the canopy, it bore scars across its plated chest. Its eyes glowed blue. A crown-like array of reinforced bone jutted from its head. Atop it sat a human figure in dark armor. One hand held reins. The other held a long rifle, coated in a makeshift sheath of beast hide. The rifle pointed directly at the drone. The human spoke. Observe. Record. Leave. The transmission cut. The message wasn't a threat. It was a boundary. In the room filled with the most powerful alien leaders in the galaxy, no one moved. The sacred beast had once been the edge of fear, a thing left untouched because none dared to challenge it. Now it was something else. A weapon, a declaration, and someone, somewhere, had made it answer to them. The crash wasn't violent. Not at first. The colony's ship Maribel lost propulsion during a magnetic storm and was pulled into Vardan's gravity well. Systems failed. Communication blacked out. There were no maydays, no beacons. The vessel tore through the upper atmosphere and disintegrated on descent. Only fragments hit the surface. Of the 312 crew and colonists on board, 64 survived the impact. Within 2 weeks, half of them were dead. The planet didn't attack with brute force. It was the air, thick with microbial rot. The water, laced with corrosive organisms. Plants secreted paralytics. Predators stalked in silence. No pattern, no logic. Vardan wasn't just dangerous. It was alive, intelligent in its hostility. Everything fought to survive, and nothing cooperated, except the humans. The survivors split into 2 groups. One tried to build a perimeter around the main wreckage. The other, mostly soldiers and scouts, went mobile. They moved fast, learned faster. Every death became data. Every loss an adjustment. They never tried to conquer the planet. They adapted to it. Marco Vance had his first encounter with the beast on day 61. It wasn't a battle. It wasn't some dramatic duel of wills. It was survival. He was alone, separated during a skirmish with a pack of 6-legged stalkers. He had 1 mag left, a broken arm, and no shelter. When he collapsed under a petrified tree, he expected to die. Instead, the stalkers died screaming. It emerged from the jungle in absolute silence. The sacred beast, 3 tons of claw, plate, and rage. It tore through the predators with clinical brutality. There was no showmanship, no fury, just method. It didn't even glance at Vance until the last stalker fell. Then it stopped. They stared at each other for 22 minutes. The beast didn't attack, didn't leave. It simply remained. Eventually, Vance passed out. When he woke, it was still there. That moment was the first fracture in the myth. He didn't run. He didn't shoot. He spoke, calmed his breath, didn't move fast. For the next 3 days, he followed it, watching from a distance. It ignored him, until it didn't. A second encounter with the stalkers. This time, Vance was ready. He opened fire first. The beast finished them. Again, it didn't leave. Something changed. Over the next few weeks, Vance returned to the area, brought food, tools, scraps of metal to see how it reacted. He logged everything in a wrist journal. Entry after entry, it watches when I move. It mimics patterns. It waited when I fell. The others thought he was insane. But they saw the truth when he came back with the creature behind him. Not leashed, not restrained. Following, that was the beginning. They didn't tame it. That was never the goal. They studied it, learned its paths, its needs. The beast wasn't a monster. It was an apex, yes, but not mindless. It had intelligence, memory, maybe more. They started calling it Fluffy. A joke, of course, a coping mechanism. But the name stuck. Others tried to interact. Most failed. Some died. It wasn't just about behavior. It was about presence. You didn't dominate Fluffy. You showed respect. You demonstrated capability. Then you were allowed. Soon, others noticed more of them. Different sizes. Slightly different anatomy. A matriarch with black armor. A horned one that shattered stone with its front claws. There was a pattern. Hierarchy. Tribes. Fluffy wasn't unique. It was a species. And humanity had just made first contact with a civilization of monsters. From that point forward, everything changed. The survivors split again, this time into handlers and defenders. The colony shifted from surviving Vardun to coexisting with it. They built not out of the wreckage of their ship, but from materials gathered in the wild. Reinforced hide, hardened resin, bone. The beasts responded. They approached in pairs, then in groups, watched humans from the ridgelines, tested their boundaries. And then one day, one knelt. A beast bowed its massive head before a handler, let him touch it, climb it. The first ride lasted 10 seconds before the beast threw him and shattered his leg. The second lasted 30. The third was a victory. They learned quickly. Custom harnesses were made. Lightweight armor fitted the beasts in small sections, never restricting movement. Human weapons were adapted into mounted launchers and shock lances. Training regimens were designed around trust, not force. One wrong move could mean death, but they kept pushing. Within a year, the humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving. They had 10 trained beasts, scouts, guards, haulers, each with distinct personality and capability. A black-scaled juggernaut they called Rebar, a smaller, lightning-fast female they nicknamed Zip, a brooding elder with cracked horns, Grim, and Fluffy. Fluffy was the first, the leader. When a Dominion ship passed too close to Vardun's orbit, it vanished. Concord scouts found the wreckage years later, burned, ripped open, no signs of standard weaponry, no survivors, no message, just one symbol, carved into the hull by claw, a crude circle with 3 slashes through it, the human's mark. They weren't waiting to be rescued. They weren't signaling for help. They had stayed, built, learned, and they had made gods into allies. By the time the footage leaked to the Concord, the colony wasn't a camp. It was a fortress city surrounded by titans. And the humans, they rode them, without warning, without negotiation, and without permission. The Dominion considered it a routine operation. Drenhall 4 was a mid-tier resource moon with light resistance. A few scattered mining colonies, no real military presence, and barely functional orbital defense. Standard sweep and secure. They deployed 2 carriers, 6 frigates, and a ground force of 12,000. The objective was simple: pacify the locals, seize infrastructure, and declare control. The war had stretched too long. They needed a clean win. The first sign that something was wrong came when their orbital scans returned inconsistent readings from the southern hemisphere. Massive heat signatures. Unnatural seismic movement. The Dominion Command assumed mining detonations or geological instability. They rerouted. The second sign was silence. Outposts stopped responding. Recon units vanished. Drone relays cut out mid-transmission. Still, they pushed forward. Arrogance smothered caution. They were the Dominion. Resistance would be crushed. They landed near a forest basin just off the equatorial ridge. Infantry moved in tight formations, armored vehicles rolling behind. Sensor drones overhead. Then the ground started shaking. Rhythmic, deep, like thunder wrapped in bone. At first, the troops thought it was another quake. Then they saw the trees fall, not swaying or snapping, but collapsing in waves. Something was coming. The beasts hit like an extinction event. The first wave came from the east, 3 of them, armored in black plates that shimmered with residual heat. Each one moved faster than any Dominion sensor could track. The first beast collided with a forward tank, shearing it in half with a shoulder slam. The second leapt 40 meters through the air, landing in the center of formation, crushing vehicles and scattering bodies like dust. Then the riders emerged. Humans, clad in composite armor molded from organic and synthetic materials. They rode high, legs strapped deep into specialized saddle rigs. Each carried a primary weapon, mag-accelerated lances, plasma rifles, or customized explosive-tipped spears. They didn't speak, didn't broadcast terms. They simply charged. The second wave came from above, airborne assault beasts with gliding membranes and reinforced claws. They dropped from ridges, pulling Dominion flyers out of the sky with savage precision. Gunships tried to engage, but electromagnetic jammers knocked out targeting systems. Visual locks failed. Heat tracking was useless. The beasts ran hotter than tanks. The third wave was fluffy, larger than the rest, bone crowns shining under the scorched sky, plates glowing from embedded heat cores. A massive shoulder-mounted cannon, repurposed from old colony tech, sat idle until the Dominion's rear line formed up. Then Fluffy fired. The shock wave leveled a kilometer of jungle. Dominion troops fell back in chaos. Command centers flooded with panic. Orders conflicted. Retreat clashed with retaliation. Mechs deployed bipedal walkers with high-yield particle cannons. They didn't last 2 minutes. One was torn apart mid-step, its pilot screaming as talons breached the cockpit. Another was dragged into a ravine by a pair of beasts acting in tandem, coordinated. This wasn't wild aggression. It was strategy. Humans used terrain like second skin. Their attacks flowed between the beasts like currents. One squad dismounted mid-charge, setting up shock charges on retreat paths. Another feigned withdrawal, only to lure a battalion into a swamp where 3 waiting beasts ambushed from below the waterline. Every movement was practiced, polished, perfected. The Dominion began to realize this wasn't a human colony with monster pets. This was a monster legion with human generals. Within hours, half the Dominion force was dead or unaccounted for. The other half attempted evacuation. Only one ship made it off-world. It lasted 12 seconds in orbit before something, no one could confirm what, hit it with enough force to rupture its core reactor. The explosion was visible from the moon's far side. After the battle, there were no declarations, no recorded victory message, just silence. Dominion black boxes captured only fragments, screams, shouts. A single phrase repeated by one commander before the line went dead. They're not fighting to win. They're fighting to end. Surveillance recovered one final piece of footage. A rider stood over the ruins of the Dominion command outpost, Fluffy beside him. Ash rained from the sky. The rider held a banner, makeshift, tattered, but unmistakably human. He planted it in the scorched earth. The emblem wasn't a flag. It was a warning. A crude sketch of a beast, jaw open, fangs bared, with a human silhouette standing calmly on its back. The message was clear. The sacred beast now had riders, and the riders had no masters. No one knew exactly when the humans decided to stop hiding. For years, they operated on the fringes, ghosts in the dead zones of Vardun, whispers on the Concord datanets, anomalies in sensor logs dismissed as glitches. But everything changed the day the Concord Council convened to respond. The video feed was raw. No filters. No edits. A human woman stood before a gathering of towering beasts, each with armor gleaming under a toxic sun. She spoke in a language no one recognized, but her tone carried something unmistakable: authority. Behind her, thousands of humans emerged from fortified camps, flanked by dozens of sacred beasts, all trained, battle-ready, and synchronized. They were no longer survivors. They were an army. The Concord's emissaries arrived shortly after, armed with diplomacy and demands for disarmament. They expected fear, submission, perhaps bribes. Instead, the humans responded with defiance. "We do not seek your approval," the human leader said. "We carve our destiny here, on this world of death, with our allies. They called themselves the Vardun Accord, a coalition forged not in peace, but in shared struggle and domination over a planet that had tried to kill them. The Concord sent envoys to negotiate, but talks quickly collapsed. The humans refused to explain how they tamed the sacred beast, only that they would defend their home against anyone who threatened it. In the following months, intelligence reports detailed a new phase of expansion. The Vardun Accord launched precise strikes against resource stations, cutting supply lines, disrupting trade. Their beasts became symbols of unstoppable force. The galaxy took notice. Alliances fractured. Some factions wanted to contain the threat. Others debated whether humanity's rise was a sign of evolution or an omen of chaos. The humans, however, seemed unconcerned. Their eyes were set on the stars beyond Vardun. In secret, a new fleet was built, not of warships, but of transports capable of carrying sacred beasts and riders across light years. Training facilities expanded. Beasts were bred selectively, crossbred with native fauna, creating hybrids tailored for different combat roles. And all the while, the humans trained harder. They held no illusions about their fragility. They knew the galaxy wouldn't accept their dominion quietly, so they prepared for war, for survival, for legacy. The final message came unexpectedly. A broadcast sent across all channels, no encryption, no hiding. The human rider atop Fluffy addressed every listening race. We are no longer prey. We are the hunters. The sacred beasts are not relics of fear, but the future of warfare. Join us or stand aside. That day, the galaxy learned a truth it had long avoided. Humans didn't just ride the sacred beasts into battle. They commanded them, and they were ready to lead the next war.